confirm when we're live?
We ready, yes?
Yes, we're live, Chair, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Live Well Scrutiny on the 17th of March. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Before we go any further, I do have some housekeeping to go through. So first of all, may I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they use the remote raise hand function? If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of the chair and or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the chair or Democratic Officer know. So, please could I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, cabinet members, our officers, and also anyone watching the live meeting broadcast. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. I haven't been given any. Do we have any, Amy?
None direct to myself, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, Councillor Bruce gives her apologies, please.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other apologies? Okay, I don't see any other hands up. We will move on to the second item, which is minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of January 2026. Are people happy with the minutes? And can I have a proposer and seconder, please? Councillor Hennessy?
I propose we accept the minutes as they are.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas?
Just a second.
Thank you. All right, so they are accepted. Agenda item 3 is receiving declarations of interest. Do we have any from anybody? Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to declare an interest in agenda item 5, Social Services Environment Housing Directorate Plan. I have relatives in receipt of social care and telecare. A dispensation from Standards Committee to speak and vote, and my interest is personal, not prejudicial, so I will stay in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other declarations of interest? No hands up. Okay, so we will go on to agenda item 4, which is the Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan 2026 to 2029. This is something we have had before at Homes and Safe. So I will hand over to Nick now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. If it's okay, I'm going to talk to the report and give you a bit of a brief background and a bit of an overview of what's in the report. But my colleague, Heddwyn John, is also on the call today, and Heddwyn works directly in this service area. So he may chip in and help me out by the time we get to questions if there's anything specific or very detailed that members are looking to clarify. So hopefully that is okay. By way of summary and introduction, Housing Support Grant, or HSG, as I'll refer to it as I go through, is funding received from the Welsh Government each year to provide housing-related support to vulnerable people in the Vale. It's across 10 years, and not just for people in social housing. And examples of support provided for people with mental health challenges, young people, victims of domestic abuse, older people. It's quite a broad spectrum of support provided to many clients, really. The Vale has been allocated this year just over £5.9 million for HSG for the next year. And a condition of that grant is that we put together or have in place a local delivery plan, setting out how we're setting our priorities and what we're looking to achieve, and also an annual spend plan as well. So breaking down that £5.9 million into a specific amount to provide support to people in various different support categories. So both those documents are included as an appendix, I think, to the report. The recommendation on this report is asking members of Live Well for consideration of the report and both the local delivery plan and the spend plan, with any comments or clarifications then prior to it going on to Cabinet for approval. By way of background, I know some members are very sort of involved and very knowledgeable in terms of housing support grant, maybe others less so. But housing support grant has been around for some time. It's an amalgamation of previously there was different sort of grant streams, and they were amalgamated to form housing support grant. The council's role in respect of housing support grant is that of a commissioner. So we identify priorities for support. We tender contracts, and we also review and assess the delivery of support contracts. The support contracts themselves are provided by support providers, specialists in this area. So members may be aware of the likes of Llamau, Pobl, Vydd, etc. Those agencies provide the support directly to members of the community living in the Vale of Morgan. In terms of key issues in the report, the Vale Award this year, as I said, is 5.9 million. That's a 3% uplift. Initially, we were looking at an increase which was slightly less, but over the last few weeks, we had notification of additional funding in the region of about £73,000 on top of what we'd had. So that brings us up to the 3%, which is really good news. What is also good news is that this level of funding enables us to maintain and continue to deliver existing support services. We're not looking at cutting any services this year. It's fair to say, however, that things are getting tighter financially. And this is mainly down to the fact that the real living wage has increased significantly. Over the last year, it's been a 6.7% increase in the real living wage. And given the fact that a lot of our grant money goes towards support workers, and those supporters tend to be paid at the lower end of the spectrum. So increasing the real living wage by 6.7% has a considerable impact on the costs to the council. We've estimated it equates to about £250,000 worth of additional costs for the council going towards the support workers. And when you contrast that with the 3% uplift, that probably equates to about 189,000. So you can see we've had £189,000 worth of uplift, but an inflationary cost increases of probably about £250,000. What we have been able to do in order to mitigate the impact of that is look at efficiencies. So we've been in discussions with support providers, looked at existing services, and we've also done a little bit of reconfiguration to take advantage of some additional capacity and to try and get some extra flexibility within existing contracts. So that's been really sort of effective and has helped us to get to the point that we're in at the moment. Moving next to the delivery plan. This is an appendix in the report. The delivery priorities are informed by an ongoing support needs assessment. You'll notice in the report that the most lead support needs, the three highest areas really are, firstly, people who are homeless and threatened with homelessness. Secondly, mental health. And thirdly, domestic abuse. So accordingly, those priorities are reflected in our delivery priorities. The spend plan, as I mentioned briefly, sort of breaks down, is the table in the report, which breaks down the actual cash allocation towards each lead support need. The point to make here really is there's two main types of support being provided. The first is floating support, which is around the person. Typically, somebody who's receiving this support would be allocated a support worker who would visit and spend a couple of hours with them each week over a number of weeks to help them achieve their objectives. So that's floating support. The other kind of main type of support is temporary supported accommodation, and that's property-based support. So support that's available within a property or project-based setting. So an example of that is probably the complex needs hostel, where staff are on site providing support. That second type of support, the temporary supported accommodation, is expensive because it's high intensity, it's on site, it can be 24/7 in some cases as well, but it's very, very helpful and appropriate for people with very acute support needs, people who perhaps would not be able to have their support needs met through floating support, so weekly visits, etc. So what we try to do in the spend plan is get a good blend of support, providing people in the most acute need, but also providing lots of floating support to people who perhaps need lesser support, but just to get back on track or deal with some issues and maintain their independence. So we try to strike the right balance. The spend plan also, you'll see, is money allocated to people with all kinds of support needs. So we try to ensure that all of the lead support needs have some support available. There is a backlog and a shortfall in most lead support needs, but there is support available, and rather than sort of heavily or use nearly all of the budget to fund one or two lead support needs, we try and ensure that there's support available for people in all the different categories of support needs. So just in closing, really, that the housing support grant allocation to the Vale is significant. It's a big amount of money, and it makes a huge difference in terms of providing support to the most vulnerable people in our communities. The existing support services are protected for next year, and we've done some work already, realizing efficiencies. There is more we can do and we want to do to continue to ensure we have the best impact of that money. So we'll continue to work closely with support providers, because it's likely that there will be pressures on budgets ahead, and we need to ensure that what we're doing is as lean and as efficient as possible. So I'll probably leave it there for now, Chair, if that's okay, other than sort of invite people to ask any questions or pick up any points of detail that might be in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Do we have any questions? Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, you were first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Nick. And I know that from reading this document, clearly you and your team have invested a great deal of time and energy and investment in considering where we are right now. And I note that throughout this report, what's stark is around the increase in pressures, not just on the service, but on the residents that we seek to address, to support. I've just got a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Can I just refer you to page 5, the needs mapping assessment? Have I looked at, it's just a point of clarity, have I looked at this wrong? Because I've looked at the number of units compared to the unmet needs, and I've worked it out as a percentage. So I just wanted to know, obviously, domestic abuse, stroke violence, where predominantly women are the victims and survivors, that raises quite an important sort of equalities issue for us. And I've worked it out that we're only sort of looking at 17.5% of meeting that need, which is quite stark and worrying. And then in relation to mental health, I know previously in Homes and Safer Communities, we had some really insightful discussions on digging down into the various elements or underlying conditions around mental health. Is there going to be, going forward, any ability for the team to separate underlying conditions. So it's not just sort of described as mental health, because as we know, we're some people with some chronic illnesses that come under the umbrella of mental health. And the needs assessment and sort of building up the data, how long has that been ongoing? Because you're starting to look at the data and building the data on clients' needs to sort of help you compare and structure your program going forward. So I was just interested to know, how long is that position been in place, that structure, that strategy, and how often is it reviewed? And I'll stop there because I have a number of other questions, and I'm not sure if Heather's going to come in at this. Heather is going to come in as well.
Yeah, he may well do, Councillor. I'll make a start, and I think it'd be useful. Oh, thanks, Hedwyn, if you are able to sort of add, really, because there's quite a bit to unpack there in terms of the questions. I think the first point I'd kind of make really is that the units of support vary. So for somebody who's getting support, floating support, that might equate to a few hours per week. To somebody who's in a temporary supported housing project, that might be one bed space. So sometimes with it, this is a little bit misleading. Not always comparing apples with apples, because a room in a refuge for people with domestic abuse is more costly to provide than somebody to have floating support for a few hours every week. In terms of the lead support needs, there is a shortfall on Byw'n services, as well as a lot of the other support needs. So what we've got available to provide in terms of support doesn't meet total needs out there, is the first point. The point you make in terms of that particular service being an issue, I think some providers are better than others in terms of providing their needs assessment information. So we get a lot of referrals around needs for support from some providers, and that can kind of, because they're better at their record keeping and they put the information in more regularly, it can show us a bigger gap. But in terms of domestic abuse, you'll be aware we've got funding going into to refuge, but we've also got the floating support services as well, and as well as we've got the dispersed refuge accommodation as well. So we'd like to be provided more support, but we have to sort of cut our cloth accordingly, really, and what we provide kind of meets a lot of the key needs. The second point you made was in terms of mental health, and you're absolutely right. It's such an issue at the moment, and it is very hard to detangle mental health as a standalone issue, because often when people present, they may be mental health, they may be substance misuse, they might be domestic abuse. There's a whole manner of issues. So just to reassure you that the support provided isn't restricted to one thing. The support providers, although they're specialists in providing, say, mental health, will also support people across other support needs when working with them. The needs, the last part, the needs mapping assessment has been going on for each year. It's been going on for some time. We ask for that information to be provided, and that's collated and reviewed, and there are various groups that we work with in order to sort of assess that and ensure that we're interpreting that correctly and prioritising services in the right way. So that's an ongoing thing. At a point in time, we assess the information that we've got, and that informs the spend plan and delivery objectives, but that kind of process continues in the background. So we'll be, even though we've put together those priorities for next year, we'll be receiving needs assessment forms today, tomorrow, next week, etc. We will continue receiving those, and those will all be reviewed as part of our future planning. So Heather, I don't know if you wanted to sort of add any points of detail in respect, or correct me if I on anything I've said, if that's appropriate.
Absolutely, yeah. So in terms of, I think it was the first question, in terms of the need for domestic abuse. So in terms of our service providers, we do tend to get a lot of referrals from local domestic abuse support agencies. They are very good at sending those referrals through. We do have a support people gateway, so we make sure that we prioritise referrals based on the needs that come through. We use a standardised housing related support form, which we call the HRS. And on that form, we basically have, people can self-refer or professionals can refer to us, and we ask them sort of grade someone's needs on like a primary need, secondary need, and tertiary need. So in the case, and this can apply to any needs category, but what we would do if someone was a primary need, for example, for domestic abuse, then we would refer them to specialist domestic abuse support. But occasionally well, I say occasionally, in a lot of cases, people have multiple needs. So someone's primary need may be homelessness, it may be mental health, it could be drug and alcohol, substance misuse, a whole range of different things. They may have domestic abuse as a secondary or tertiary need. So in terms of needs mapping, that would show up under domestic abuse as well. And as part of our gateway process, then we would sort of triage that referral and then send it to the most appropriate provider. In some cases, it may be self-reported as domestic abuse, but it may be historical. It may not be that recent. It may be something that's happened in the past. So in that case, the referral may be more appropriate to go to a generic support provider, where the main need may actually be their housing. They're homeless, or there's an eviction, or they've got rent arrears, or whatever the housing related support need may be. We obviously prioritize that referral to the more relevant provider if needs be. In terms of our existing units, shall we say, in terms of our support provision, the domestic abuse situation, obviously the refuge has a high demand. We have a direct access refuge in the Vale. There are only a small number of units, and there's a secondary stage refuge as well. So we work closely with the support provider that delivers that service, to make sure that obviously the right people are prioritised. But in many cases, victims fleeing abuse do have to move out of county for their own personal safety, and that's when the support providers in the Vale will work with other agencies across the UK, because victims of domestic abuse are able to access refuge accommodation right across the UK. But of course that means people from out of county may come into the Vale there. But we do closely monitor the referrals. Nick mentioned our assessment process, so we get referrals all the time, and we're always compiling that data, trying to expand services where possible, increasing the number of units. But I would say, we always would like more support, more units. In terms of domestic abuse, it would be the refuge capacity would be the main shortfall. In terms of floating support, the waiting list for that is minimal. It can be very, very short. If we don't leave them waiting, shall we say, we have a waiting list, but it's basically a spreadsheet where someone goes on there, and what we will do then is, if someone does present with a domestic abuse issue, then we will contact the Vale Domestic Abuse Service straight away, pass that information through so they can get immediate support really about their domestic abuse issue. And if they need more longer term support, then there may be a slight wait, but we do our best to ensure that it's minimal, if that makes sense. I can't quite remember what the second question was, Councillor. Do you mind reminding me?
No, you have, Nick, thank you, because I can see further in the report where you've looked at sort of the very matters that you've just talked about, is where someone presents initially as domestic abuse or violence, and that's the lead priority, but underneath that there are other strands. So I can see there's been work done on that. And I just wanted to ask around the mild, moderate and serious. I assume that those who are at the coalface then make that assessment of the needs. And I was wondering, how is there a criteria for determining what is considered mild, moderate, severe? And I just thought, from a point of view of wanting to know as much as possible about how those needs are assessed, because I think the report itself is, goes to great detail. It shows there's some real joined up thinking here between the council and the services that we work with in collaboration to provide the support to the residents. And I know there are gaps, and I know that there are pressures. So I'm just keen to focus on where we can sort of continue to work then in sort of identifying those gaps, and how we breach them.
Yeah. So in terms of mild, moderate and serious, so that would be self-reported by the service user who's asking for support. Obviously, our support workers are trained in a range of expertise, shall we say. If someone's a specialist domestic abuse provider, they are especially trained in that. Mental health support provider will be specially trained in that, for example. And then, of course, it's about using judgment, liaising with other agencies. If someone is coming via a community mental health referral, someone's coming via social services, failed domestic abuse service. But it's important to stress that the services that we deliver are housing related support services. So if someone's referred to a mental health supported accommodation, for example, then the support workers, that they do have additional training, but they are still in essence housing support workers. They have a lot of experience working with mental health. They have that extra training and lived experience, many of them, but they will work very closely with the relevant agencies, community practitioners, the Vale locality mental health team, Llandoc Hospital, Havanacoid ward, for example. So, our support providers know what they're good at, but they also know about signposting or deferring or bringing in the experts from the relevant agencies. Cavadas when it comes to substance misuse, working with probation service if we have service users that have come out of a prison system, for example. So in terms of the mild, moderate, and serious, there's obviously grey areas in that, and it is reliant on self-reporting, I will say.
Thank you. Councillor Cave. Councillor Cave, are you wanting to speak? You have got your hand up. There you are.
Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you for the report. As you pointed out, it's a really important area because it's a massive spend on behalf of the council. I'm particularly interested in the mental health services and how you access them. I think in the 4 nations of the UK, Wales actually has the biggest spend on antidepressants because there are very limited services in terms of counselling services. So I'm wondering, maybe you've got access to some sort of counselling services for those with severe need. But as you've pointed out in your report, there's an increase in poor mental health generally across Wales. And I just wondered, for those that would present with mild to moderate mental health problems, NICE guidelines suggest that you have medication for moderate with counselling. So that would be CBT counselling. And I wonder how you work with the health board to ensure that that happens for this group of people.
Well, thank you for the question, Councillor. So in terms of our support services, I just want to reiterate, it is a housing-related support service. So if someone does present with a mild, moderate, or even serious mental health issue, the main focus of the support that we fund is always be about preventing homelessness, maximising their independence, making sure someone's paying their rent, for example. But obviously, mental health plays a key role in that. I mean, it could be a bit of a chicken and egg scenario. If someone is being evicted or has rent arrears, then inevitably that's going to affect mental health. But then on the other side of the situation, someone who has a pre-existing condition or a significant issue with mental health, that could be affecting their ability to make sure the rent is paid or to manage their tenancy and so on and so forth. So as part of the HRS form that is filled in, or if they present to one of the support agencies, part of the needs assessment, part of the assessment there, the support worker will ask the person presenting there about their mental health needs. They will ask them basic questions. For example, are you registered with the GP? Are you currently receiving mental health support? Are you on any medication, for example? It's about building a picture of that service user's needs and how support can be delivered. In many cases, people aren't registered with the GPs, or people maybe there's a stigma around accessing mental health support. It's not unusual for people to deny that they have a mental health or not recognise they have a mental health. So the support workers are trained to have a a conversation with the individual and try to build that picture and encourage individuals to access those services. A lot of people don't know how to get referred to their locality mental health team. A lot of people haven't you know haven't got that access to the GPs if they recently moved into the area, or they've recently left the care system, that sort of thing. So a part of the support plan, which the support worker will work with the client, with the service user, will be to get things like registered with the GP. They'll even attend appointments with them if needs be. They will refer them to counselling if there's access to that. Some of the support providers that we work with have their own independent counselling services that are outside of the NHS. They are limited, of course. There's always waiting lists, but there are routes through to that. But the vast majority will, of course, they'll be supported to access the GP, support with their locality mental health, and accessing those services. I hope that answers your question.
Hedwyn, just to sort of add, really, Councillor Cave, just to make the point that to emphasise the point that this is housing related support, so it complements health services and other services, but not replaces those services. So work alongside the primary care services, etc.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. And as was said earlier, it is comprehensive and detailed. I'm interested in the pathway for someone. I'm thinking of a particular case where someone was admitted to Llandox, some months ago, and has stepped down to accommodation now, supported accommodation in Cardiff, near Whitchurch, but is looking to return to the Vale. And I'm just interested in what that pathway looks like, please. Oh, incidentally, as I understand it, the Coed whatever it is in Llandoch doesn't use CBT as much these days, but some sort of Scandinavian model. I think based on some Finnish model that they find more efficacious for Councillor Cave's enlightenment.
To answer the question about the pathway, in terms of how the housing support grant, all local authorities in Wales have a housing support grant or supporting people team, such as we do in the Vale. If you have a Cardiff resident and they wished to move to the Vale, then they would be able to contact our equivalents in Cardiff Council, access their support. They would have support workers that would help facilitate that move. They would operate very similarly to how we do. They have their own referral system, their needs assessment, and they would support that individual to do a support plan. If, however, they are a Vale resident and have only been placed there temporarily, then they would be able to access our support directly to us. They can go on our website, they can give us a ring, and we can, if they're unable to, if they don't have a form, they don't have access to a computer, we can arrange for a telephone assessment if needs be to be carried out, and we can then provide support with them to put a plan in place to help them to apply for homes for you if they're looking at social housing or look for private rented accommodation in the Vale. Those sort of steps, really. It depends on the residency, shall we say, of that individual. I'm assuming that as it's a Vale council, they're from the Vale, but there are routes for people outside the Vale to move into the Vale if needs be.
The person I'm thinking of is a Vale resident, but as I say, has been temporarily housed in some unit they've got in Whitchurch that
right.
is looking to return to the Vale.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yes, they can access. They can ring us. They can email us. If you have their details, we can always make contact with them and arrange a needs assessment, and then get some support put in place to help arrange that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Right, there are no hands up, so I will go to recommendations. I didn't hear any recommendations from the committee. So we have 2 recommendations here from the report. And that the first is that the Scrutiny Committee considers the Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan 2026 to 29 and refers its recommendations to Cabinet for approval. Well, we don't really have any. So we will just recommend accept the plan. Yes, is that correct, Amy?
Can I suggest that? Well, can I move that we recommend that we endorse the report? We endorse the report and send it to the Cabinet for their views.
Yes, that is it. So we are happy to endorse the report. I see no dissension. That will be going ahead. Okay, so thank you very much, Nick and Heddwyn. Amy?
If I may, Chair, just for clarity for the minutes, obviously the 2 recommendations you have in the report are differentiated between the Housing Support Grant Delivery Plan and the Housing Support Grant Spend Plan. So I just want to check for clarity that the committee are happy to endorse both.
I'm assuming that is correct. Committee, are you happy to endorse both? Councillor Hanks?
Happy to endorse, Chair.
Okay. Can I just ask, has anybody else got a frozen screen?
I have it. Oh, not at the moment, Chair. Mine's okay.
Okay, mine has frozen and it's it's
okay.
back. It's back. Thank you. Sorry, I could not see anything. Thank you. Okay, so agenda item 5 now. Okay, that is agenda item 5 is Social Services and Environment and Housing Directorate Plans 2026 to 27, outlining Year 2 activities, performance measures and associated performance targets to deliver Vale 2030, the Council's Corporate Plan 2025 to 2030. Lance, am I handing this over to you?
Yeah, alongside Trevor, because the 2 of us are going to be trying to do this together, recognising that our directorate plans are different and separate, but there is a presentation, I believe, that should hopefully help for members to go through it this evening, if that's okay. I don't know, Gareth or Amy, you're able to put it up. Okay, brilliant, thank you. So this is the structure of what we're going to do this evening. When we get into the kind of meat of it, Trevor will go first and then I'll go. We haven't actually discussed who's going to do this middle bit at the beginning, so we'll probably flick it between the 2 of us. So if you could move on to the next slide, please, Gareth. Obviously, the directorate plans fit with the corporate plans for Vale 2030, and the 5 directorate plans, of which you're going to see 2 tonight, are reported to the relevant scrutiny committee. I think certainly for social services, that's the entirety of our plan. I'm sure Trevor will cover that for you in a moment. So you'll be able to see the plan. Hopefully you've had a chance to read them in terms of background papers, and you should be able to see the detail of that. And I think it probably is important to say that the plans have been through a moderation process already, so we've had the opportunity to review each other's plans and I suppose provide comment and also suggestions to each other, which I think has been really helpful. Similarly, they've been reviewed by the relevant cabinet members. So in terms of the structure, each of them has these 5 sections. I think probably the important bit, certainly for social services, but I think probably amongst all the plans really is section 4 in terms of what we're going to do in 26-27. Just before I hand over to Trevor, I think it's probably important to say for the social services one, this sits as part of a fairly extensive planning process. So there's a statutory requirement also to deliver a director's report, and that happens every year, and that'll be coming to you soon, hopefully in a couple of months. And what we've tried to do is align our activity in terms of what I said at number 4, what we will do in 26-27 with the director's report. So the director's report will have the same actions that hopefully we're agreeing tonight. In terms of scrutiny this evening, members are asked to review the plans and endorse via recommendation to Cabinet the planned activities and proposed measures and performance targets, and also asked to refer any comments and recommendations with regard to the plans to Cabinet for their consideration and endorsement. So I feel like I've hogged all of that bit, Trevor, so if you want to come in now and then if there's anything you want to add before you get stuck into yours, then please go for it.
Cheers, lads. No, you did an amazing job. Cheers, buddy. What I thought would be helpful, there's quite a lot of information contained within the directorate plan. So what I've tried to do is distill it into just some themes and some high-level actions to give members and the public just an idea of some of the priorities that those actions are trying to tackle. So what you've had in front of you is looking at the actions for the coming year, and it's broken down basically in 5 different sections, not all of which are directly relevant to this committee. Environment and housing crosses over a number of different scrutiny committees, so I'll try my best to keep on track. Obviously looking at addressing housing and homelessness challenges, and obviously we heard about some detail in the HSG earlier. Improving our neighbourhood, streets and environment, transport and active travel, leisure play, community wellbeing and safety. And following this report, I know there's going to be an update on the task and finish work by members on that. And then the reshaping priorities for the directorate. If we go on to the next slide. So within the plan as well, there's just some background and context information, some key budgetary information there. So within environment and housing, there's a base budget of around £32 million for 26-27. That's there to deliver our services. There's some information around some of the reshaping, efficiency, income targets, and service improvement opportunities, and some detail in the report on what some of those look like. The high-level breakdown is there, so it ranges from income increases, transport policy transformation, TROs and coastal region, and commercial opportunities. So to give you a flavour of some of the different lines of inquiry that we're going to be looking at for those areas. The report also details some key engagement priorities for the next year. Again, a lot of these you will have seen as regular occurrences, but several public consultation on TROs, things like speed limits, parking charges, and school transport policy, which have been discussed previously as well. And then there's a breakdown in terms of the corporate and directorate risks. So the highest one relevant to us is around housing and homelessness, and that scores quite high as a 12. We heard about some of the pressures, and you've just had a detailed report on some of those around the pressures we have in terms of the demand, as well as challenges around meeting housing supply. And as well in the plan, it details some of the actions that we're taking around that. There's some more risks there around structural and infrastructure assets, as well as difficulties with retention and business critical posts. And we do have several key or specialist roles within the directorate. We go on to the next slide. Sorry, my computer's asking me to reboot. We're going to go no. So what I've done here, again, there's about 80 plus individual metrics that are contained within the plan. So I've tried to break those down into high level. What are the key challenges? What success looks like? What do we need to keep doing? What do we need to do differently? So some of the main themes there, none of which will surprise you. As I mentioned, we've got significant housing and homelessness pressures. We've got high demand for work around prevention and the prevention agenda, reduction in the use of temporary accommodation and more affordable homes. There's some information on there around what we're doing for street cleaning, nature commitments, and some of the challenges we have overall, like every directorate has within the council, around budgets and workforce. And then there's some information as well around partnership capacity. So a lot of the stuff that we're looking to deliver is going to be based on some of the partnerships that we have and making sure that those partnerships are effective and that we have capacities to work, develop and facilitate those going forward. We have new legislation coming in within housing, and we've got other regulatory issues and things around play and leisure that we need to work in partnership and continue to grow for. In terms of what success looks like, oh, there we go. Again, these are just some of the metrics that are pulled from the report. High-level themes: more homes delivered and started on site, stronger work for homelessness prevention, fewer folks in temporary accommodation, and helping people to stay independent. And we've just heard some details around that. There's some metrics, some quantitative metrics linked to that as well. So things like improved tenant satisfaction, the progress on the WHQS program. We have worked towards net zero, and that's reflected in how we build our homes and the technologies that we use within them. And then there's some data in there around some of the completions and programs that we have on site. So places like Cadoxton House, for example, or the old police station in Cowbridge, some of the work that's going in producing new forms of accommodation. There's also some data in there around metrics for the effectiveness of some of the interventions around homelessness that we have for maintaining independence as well, which is relevant. We go on to the next slide. The plan also makes reference to some of the things we need to keep doing. So again, the pressures and need, and when we're dealing with vulnerable folks in crisis, obviously time is of the essence. So to continue driving that program of work around rapid rehousing, home building. We are in a very challenging situation around not being able to meet demand. So anything we can do to accelerate that progress is going to be key. And then acting as a springboard for our residents and those who need us, and that prevention-led approach. So stemming the flow of need as far as possible, and making sure that the support that we have is effective, as bestly resourced as we can, and able to develop change for our residents and for those who need us. Again, things we need to keep doing. There's reference there is with the housing delivery and the strong partnership we have. So, for example, with Levels and our build program, and then some of the work we do with regulatory services and some of the other partnerships. So with leisure, for example, we've got a really strong partnership in terms of how we manage our leisure centres, and that continues to evolve and grow in a mutually beneficial way. In terms of some of the things that we need to do differently, looking at what's included in the directorate plan, we have a lot of data on lots of different things. We are data rich. We're not always, we're sometimes information poor, if that makes sense. So making sure that we're using that data as effectively as we can and correlating the different pieces of data. So Lance in his area will have parts of data, different services across my area will have parts of data, education will have parts of data, making sure that that's collated and used as effectively as possible. And to make sure that we align what few resources we have as a local authority going forward these days to the best that we can. A lot of that information links to some of the programs of work around reshaping services. So how we support our tenants in their homes, for example, when they have issues and they ring up the call center, how those calls are managed effectively, how information is accessed effectively and is presented to individuals. And I know the Task and Finish group is going to talk on some of those issues a little bit later on in terms of leisure. How do we make sure that there's access to this information for folks who need it? And to look at different ways of delivering our services. And we do have some really interesting areas of really good practice, if not best practice, within the directorate in terms of how our shared regulatory services works, for example, across different local authorities. and even across Wales in some aspects. What can we learn from how that's been done? What can we learn from the partnership arrangements we have with Parkwood Leisure, for example, and how does that inform other areas of the business and what we can do going forward? We go on to the next one. We then go on to some of, in the next section of the report, we talk about how we measure success, and this will be the same for some of the metrics that Lance has as well. I thought it would be useful because there are different types of targets which are presented in different ways. So just to give you some context and overview on that. It's basically broken down into 4 different themes. So we have hard delivery targets, quantitative targets. We have holding targets. These are more realistic targets that need to reflect the pressures and challenges that we have with our services. Not to lose the ambition of making things better, but in terms of making it realistic in terms of what we have available and what's achievable. There are a series of targets in the plan which are aimed at establishing baseline measures. So for some of the priorities that we have, or some of the different ways that we're looking at services, we know we need to start from a position of knowledge. So establishing those baselines, making sure we have the governance and data collection mechanisms in place. And then we have some context-only measures where a lot of the things that we're reporting on are externally influenced. So having an understanding of where those targets are and what some of the metrics are help inform the decisions that we take strategically. But equally, we have limited impact in terms of affecting those directly, although indirectly in terms of the services we do, obviously we do have quite a bit of control. The next couple of slides, they just talk about those examples of some of those different targets. So the first one there, some of the hard delivery targets. We talked about supporting people and maintaining independence. We talked about homelessness prevention. We talked about some of the WHQS progress and some of the completions we have with some of our build programs on there. We have some of the maintenance targets around tenant satisfaction. There's an interesting program of work that's happening with our tenants and making sure that, one, we understand what they're trying to tell us, but 2, we're doing something really meaningful with the information that they're providing to us. So I'm looking forward to doing some engagement work with our tenants in the coming weeks in the middle of April. Maintenance targets around homelessness prevention as well, and then some of the baseline measures that we've put in there for future target setting. So things like social value from the housing partnership. Dave and his team do some amazing work with the social value from our leisure contracts, for example. I think it's somewhere, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere in the region of £5.7 million. Making sure we extract and understand the social value from some of the partnerships we have with our partners is going to be really keen. Energy efficient and affordable homes through the Net Zero program. We talked about domestic abuse, the impacts of that, and some of the work that we need to do going forward just a few minutes ago, as well as some of the more inherent work around our build program and how that influences carbon plans, how that works with procurement, and the social value that we get with some of our partners from that perspective. And then the last one on the next slide is the context and intelligent measures. So again, some examples of those in the report. These are helpful because they give us an idea of trend and they help us inform some of the strategic decisions for stuff that we have limited or some control over. So the percentage of council homes allocated, for example, the amount of folk that we have in temporary accommodation, those who are receiving support. Some more qualitative measures, which are really important to take into account. So things like residents' feeling of safety. Again, home isn't a building, it is a feeling, and we need to make sure that we understand and capture how our folks are feeling, as well as there's some other metrics there less relevant to this committee around EV charging and charging facilities. And then it would be remiss of me, and this covers off both of the directorate plans to some extent. We talk about the directorate plans in isolation, so you're seeing a portion of it here tonight. There's another portion of it that's going to Place Directorate next week, I believe it is. But we don't create these plans or look at them or these targets in isolation, and Lance mentioned that at the beginning. even within the directorate, our services don't operate in isolation. There is a clear overlap between leisure, healthy living, public protection, homelessness, and housing support, for example. So we take a holistic approach in how we look at those services internally within the directorate and then across the council as a whole, in addition to with our partners. And there's some details on there around what that looks like in practice and how we're linking some of those things together. So some examples on the emphasis and strategies we have around developing new housing stock, for example, the reduction or the aim of reducing reliance on temporary accommodation. And then if we go over onto the next slide there, there's some information how we link things together through community safety and how that remains a priority for us going forward in the directorate plan. Some of the mechanisms that we have, for example, the Safer Vale Partnership, and looking at some of the work around domestic abuse, substance abuse, serious violence, the Prevent scheme, again, which we've just talked about previously. And then some details as well on leisure play and healthy living. So again, I'm sure there'll be a long discussion from the task and finish group, but this isn't about managing facilities. The impact of these programs, the impact of play, sports development, exercise referral has a massive impact in terms of individuals' well-being. It provides a mechanism for dealing with some of these challenges that folks have. And it has a knock-on effect in terms of some of the other services that hopefully won't be triggered as a result of taking advantage of some of these schemes, not just for the council, for the NHS as well, for example. So that's my bit in a nutshell. I'll hand back over to Mr. Carver.
Thanks, Trevor. In terms of social services, I think the priority actions, there are more than 4, but they fit these 4 themes really, and they're probably things that you would expect us to be working on. And I'll go through them in a bit more detail in a minute, but I think safeguarding is core business for us, and so there are clear actions around that. We're looking to try and extend and expand, I guess, the types of services that we offer to support our communities. And so that's what's recognised in number 2. Number 3 is about probably an internal piece of work for us, really, around replacing our IT system. That's going to be a big part of 26-27. And then also we have a whole host of accommodation plans, and I haven't put children's services on there, but they're also recognised within the plan details. So I think that's that bit. Then if I go on to managing our resources, so you can see our budget is large. It's 114 million, and you'll also see that there are fairly significant savings planned for next year. It's approximately £1.7 million worth of savings. That represents 60% of the total of savings that the council is looking to deliver next year. Just to put a little bit of context into that, this financial year that we're currently in, we have been attempting to deliver on £3.6 million, so an even larger figure of savings. But that is key work for us, and the plans that are contained within directorate planning include some of the detail around each of those. We do a lot of engagement activity. I will cover that in more detail in the director's report when we get to that in a few months' time. And then also, I guess, you could probably say what we do has some inherent risks, but they are largely dealt with through the corporate risk measures. And we have a number then that also sit alongside that are processed at either a directorate or a service level. I'm not going to read what's on the slide. I'm sure you can read that yourself. The next slide, though, really lists all 10 of our actions. We have slightly less than most directorates. If I'm honest, it's because of the scale of the first 2. So the first one, I've just talked about, but actually changing the IT system is a significant venture for us, and I'm expecting that to have an impact on staff. similarly, moving offices and working from a different location has a significant impact on staff, and that's something that's going to affect almost all case management staff across social services over the coming 12 months. I mentioned that we're looking to develop new accommodation. Again, still working through some of the details with the Regional Partnership Board about how we do that, but some really positive developments hopefully coming next year in terms of that. The safeguarding ones are next. There's a couple there that relate to that. So we have a strategic framework for exploitation, but we really want to make sure it's embedded. Do a quick plug for a member briefing that's coming up in, I think, about a week's time, if you want to know more about that. And then also we have new Section 5 guidance. So Section 5 is part of the safeguarding procedures that relates to how we handle concerns raised about people in positions of trust. And so there are some changes happening to that, and hopefully that will come out sort of April, May time, and will be required to implement those changes, and CIW have promised us that they'll be inspecting us against those probably at the end of the year. Care home strategy is a fairly long-term piece of work that we've been looking at in terms of not only reviewing our internal homes, but also trying to work out how we can make sure that there are sufficient care homes of the right sort across the Vale to support our residents. Clearly, things move very quickly, and it's a very complicated picture. So that is really careful and considered work, if I'm honest. We don't want to end up doing the wrong thing because it could cost us dearly. In terms of reablement, this is something that we've been keen to do for some time, but supported by the Pathways of Care grant, we have started to extend our reablement service, so the community resource service, to try and support as many people to be independent as possible, or to have greater levels of independence. So at the moment, they screen who they take. They will continue to screen, but the people that they serve will be broadened. I mentioned earlier some of the expansion of the offers of care that we have. So we're looking to expand our shared live service, expand telecare, and develop micro providers. So micro providers are small enterprises that are born in the communities that they serve, that do that more than, I guess, a traditional domiciliary care agency would do, recognising that actually we still need traditional domiciliary care agencies, but they can work more closely with the individuals who require their help and support. We again, this next one is really a continuation of the work that we've already started in terms of developing the not-for-profit accommodation for children, and I think that is a big piece of work again, and we've got probably another couple of years of that, but some big plans for next year in terms of bringing some accommodation online. It also includes increasing the flexible range of fostering and support accommodation options for those children as well. And lastly, then embedding the early help and prevention offer. So that's the Vale Family Compass that has launched in November. We think it makes sense to really focus in on that over the next year to make sure that that's doing exactly what we want going forward. And so lastly, just in terms of Section 5, I was going to pull out the measures, but there are just so many of them. There's 12 pages in the reports that we'll be reporting to through the Directorate Plan process. Just to give you a flavour of the number that we have, there's 117 metrics provided to Welsh Government. They break down to even more, which means there's over 206 altogether that we report on. So what we have here is a selection of those in the main body of the report. And I think that's brought us to the end. So I'm sure Trevor and I and any colleagues we may have with us will be able to answer any questions on our specific areas.
Thank you. Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Chair. I have one question for you, Lance, and 2 questions for Trevor. So I'll do yours first, Lance. Thank you for the report. It's quite interesting. But are you able to tell me how many current patients are waiting for social care who are in hospital for packages to go home?
Am I able to respond?
Apologies, my button wasn't working. Go ahead, Lance.
If you give me 2 minutes, I will probably be able to give you the exact number. But what I can say to you is that there are no waits for domiciliary care. And so if an individual needs domiciliary care, we can turn that round within a day now. So that's incredibly fast. I think the Vale of Glamorgan is performing really, really well when I compare us to other Welsh authorities. And I think, you know, there is something inherent in the way delays are calculated. So delays are calculated based on somebody being considered clinically optimized, and that's normally a phrase that has been determined by a medical professional. And if they haven't left hospital within 48 hours, then they are considered to be delayed. Clinically optimized doesn't mean you're well necessarily. Clinically optimized may mean that there's nothing else that they can do for you. And so what that means is that the idea that we would necessarily be able to assess somebody, arrange for them to go and live somewhere else, somewhere like a care home, they need to make the decision about that. They may lack mental capacity. There will be a huge financial implication. It's likely to take over 48 hours in those circumstances. And so I think if you ever see those figures, there will be a big number of people who are in those kind of circumstances within it. So it's not a great measure. But I can find out the numbers and the trend information if you give me another minute. Maybe after Trevor's answered his questions, I can.
Okay, I'll go to Trevor now, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, Trevor, you said you had 74% tenant satisfaction on how they report. Can you tell me how they are reporting, if they are happy or not, or how do we communicate with them? Is it through their online journal, what they can access, or are we communicating them through press or through letter? Because I'm thinking more of the elderly people who don't like doing computers, and how we're getting results back from them.
There's a couple of different mechanisms. So that figure is pulled from a report that we do through a partner program. So they do surveys with different demographics of our residents to collate those. But you know, the point you raise around we do have people who engage with us in different ways. So we do have tenancy groups that we meet with on a regular basis. So we get that feedback face to face. So they have an opportunity to talk us through some of the issues individually, in addition to some of the information that we collate from the calls that we take through C1V. So we try and triangulate it through a number of different factors. We also are working with our libraries, for example, to try and make sure if people need access to a device because they might not own one, then they're able to access an iPad and they can fill out things that way, or they can come in for additional support. But for those folks who that isn't a reasonable expectation, or they're not comfortable doing that, then we do have those face-to-face engagement sessions that we work with. We have quite a few different mechanisms where we try and feedback the information and questions that come through us. So some of those are through paper leaflets and posters. So here are the things you've asked for, here are the things that we've done, here's what you can expect, and there's quite a big campaign around that. Additionally, there are newsletters that go out. I know that in recent months, if not a little bit longer, those have been condensed, so they were quite long newsletters that people weren't going through, so they've been brought down to just sort of the key points. So again, trying to demonstrate continual learning in terms of how residents want to engage and read that information that we make available to them.
Okay, and my second question for you, I'm looking at your WQS progress report, and you said there was 102 things ongoing and 32 progressing. How many flat complexes at the moment or have not been wrapped or had the installation thing put on them? I'm not sure if that's a question for Nick or...
That's a level of detail I don't have available for me at the moment. Nick, I don't know if you've got an answer to that one.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I don't, Councillor, I don't have a specific number I can share. It's very low, and I know there's blocks. I know the blocks you're thinking of when you asked that question. So there are some that are outstanding, but I don't have a specific number to share with you tonight. I'm sorry, but I can get that and provide that.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you. I believe I saw Ian McMillan's hand go up. Are you wanting to speak? It did disappear again.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to come back to Councillor Hennessy's question in relation to brokerage figures in respect to hospital discharges. We don't get the figures through on a daily basis, but the figures we had as of last week were there were 0 people waiting for brokerage. We tend to try and turn those requests around in 24 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Lance and Trevor, for taking us through that. If I may, I wanted to ask a question about the new PIs that have been established. So it's good to see that there are PIs in areas where we haven't had them before. I think we spoke about this last year. But I'm just wondering why we're not setting any targets. So, for example, the number of adults waiting for domiciliary care, the number of adults waiting for a placement in a care home. And the report makes it clear that targets haven't been set because of the complexity of some of the issues that you've just outlined, Lance, and it's a needs-led service. But I suppose my concern is, how do we measure performance if we're not setting any targets? So, for example, what do we mean by waiting? Do we have an idea of what we think a reasonable wait time is? We've already said in relation to hospital discharge that we're able to turn domiciliary care around within 24 hours, which is absolutely remarkable. What's the position like in the community? And I'm just wondering why we're not setting any targets around that at all.
Go ahead, Lance.
Okay, sorry, my computer's not behaving very well this evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Lance. Yes.
For a variety of reasons, I suppose ever since we had real difficulty with domiciliary care, we've been monitoring it really closely. And Ian gave, I suppose, the most recent figure that we had. It's been sustained at a really low, sort of fast level for a significant amount of time, and there is no differentiation for us in terms of those figures, whether people are in hospital or in the community. We do capture those two things separately, just to make sure that we keep an eye on it. I think in relation to the domiciliary care one, it's really hard to set a target because it's lower than we've ever known it. And so it's 0, 1, 2 days, that kind of time. It's really hard to say, oh, we'll make it even faster when it's that low. I think a lot of the indicators that we have are probably tell us about volume and demand. And if I was to set a target, so if I carry on with domiciliary care, for example, in terms of the number of adults in receipt of domiciliary care, if I was saying that my target should be higher, then I would be having to set a target that I may not be able to afford to achieve. If I'm going to say it's lower, then I'm going to have to potentially cut some services and not see people. So I think it's quite difficult a lot of what we do measure is about quantity rather than necessarily something that is really clear to have a target for. I don't know the circumstances that will affect families in the Vale over the next 12 months that will mean that they need to come into our services. And so it's really difficult to set a target for those things for those reasons.
Can I come back in, Chair, just briefly?
Go ahead, Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Yeah, thank you. I absolutely take your point, Lance, but I guess at the moment, what you're measuring, for example, the number of adults waiting for domiciliary care, that might at the moment be 0. And that will be what you'll be reporting to committee at some point. That may rise because of all sorts of circumstances to 10, 20 at some point, maybe more. And what that won't tell us is how long is that waiting time. And I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. You know, if you suddenly have 10 people who are waiting 2 days for a domiciliary care package, that might not be a significant issue. If you have 10 people who are waiting 30 days, that would be different. So it's how you get to that the quantitative impact on people who are waiting for care. I just think it's something that it's worth thinking about. I mean, this is the first year that we've had these PIs, so it'll be really interesting to see what that information gives us going forward. And I'm thinking of Trevor's comment that in some ways we're data rich and information poor. And I think there's a risk that we might find ourselves in that position in terms of some of the PIs. I'm not making any suggestion around it. I'm just saying, you know, can we just think about that going forward as this information is captured for the first time? Thanks.
Go ahead, Lance.
It's okay if I just come back quickly. So in terms of the domiciliary care one, and actually we do it for the provision of all types of care in adults, we have a dashboard in place that we tend to report on every month, so I can see you know, how things are looking. That's so that we can do exactly all the things that you've just described. So it will tell us the longest time it took for us to place a package, and it will also give us an average and also give us the numbers. So we keep an eye on that. And then within each of the departments, we also have a scorecard. So there's something that we monitor again regularly to ensure that if a situation goes beyond something that we would consider as an acceptable norm, then we start to focus in on it. So that is all part of, I suppose, daily directorate business, and so I can give you some assurance really that that's something that we continue to focus on.
Thank you, Lance. Councillor Lynch-Wilson.
Very, very interesting report. I've worked in a private care home for 10 years, and I can just say that things have changed, or not perfect. They've changed out of all recognition. We used to have regularly have people come and stay with us on respite while they were waiting for domiciliary care. We haven't had that for the last sort of 18 months. So that doesn't seem to be the big issue. We've had people come to us and it wasn't quite their thing, and domiciliary care has been sorted out very quickly for them. So I think while obviously nothing is ever perfect, the difference between when I started in a private care home to now has completely changed. We have a lot more interactions with the Vale different sections, and it just seems to be far more joined up than it ever used to be. So just carry on the good work, and like I said, nothing's perfect, because obviously we can't throw unlimited money at things, but it's a lot better. And thank you for all your hard work.
Councillor Lovelock-Edwards, do you want to come back in?
Yes, if I may, thank you, Chair. There's just a couple of points just to note, and I suppose it follows on from a point that Councillor Hennessy made earlier. There is a common theme here of digital exclusion and moving us towards sort of more strategic digital inclusion. So I just want to make sure that we are mindful of how we communicate, and where we're not able to communicate on a digital platform with residents, that the alternative methods, that we are open and have an honest assessment about whether they actually work and are fit for purpose, and that dialogue with those people who are digitally excluded. And I'm not just talking about older people here, I'm talking about, their families across the Vale, for whatever reason, are maybe digitally excluded. So I just wanted to echo that. I just wanted to ask Lance if he could just clarify page 21, or I'm happy to take it in a separate email, developing a mockingbird fostering model in the Vale of Glamorgan. I was just curious on what that entailed. And as I've said, if it's not relevant for this evening, I'm happy to take an email, or if you could signpost me to some information on that. Chair, I do have some points to make in relation to the environment and housing. So I don't know if Lance wants to come back first, and then I'll pester Trevor next. Thank you.
Okay, Lance, yes, if you could come in first. Apologies for the parrot.
Sorry for smiling. The firstly, I suppose the IT part, and the system that I was referring to is something that social workers use. It's not something that we're giving out to residents and working with them on. So it's where they record their notes, write up their assessments, and I suppose share information between teams and so on, and what produces our PIs. So that part hasn't changed. We are currently, however, working on an AI transcription tool, and we've done a short trial with that, and are about to roll it out more widely. And that is intended to, in fact, we've only had positive feedback so far, is to actually be a tool really for social workers, so that they can have those conversations directly with people rather than looking at their laptop and writing notes and so on. So some really positive developments there. Rachel might want to come in on the Mockingbird fostering model, but this is a kind of hub and spoke support model for fostering, and we're exploring really whether that's the right model for us in the Vale. You can look it up online and you'll see some details about it. I think the closest place is Bristol, so we were thinking we might go and have a look.
Thank you. Belinda, did you want to go to Trevor now?
Yeah, it's just, I just want to, again, be mindful of the fact that page 14, where we've got to seek public feedback on active travel, to seek public feedback, can we just sort of alter sort of those statements to ensure that it's not just seek public feedback, it's amend, review, adapt accordingly. We are often or increasingly hearing that residents' voices, or there's a perception that the residents' voices are not being heard. We know that's not necessarily true, but sometimes when we use language or we make statements that are a public document, we need to be more explicit on, once the public feedback, what happens to that information. And that's something I wanted to labour. Page 15, school transport public consultation. The purpose of the engagement activity, you might need to review that, because I think it relates to an earlier example, which is transfer of assets. And I think that was it for now. I have got a couple of other points, but they're wider, that I will email you separately and pester you during the week, if that's okay. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no problem at all. I think that's a really good point in terms of the consultation. So we'll take that on board, because you're absolutely right. It's not just about asking the questions. What do you do with the information when it's fed back? That's where the magic happens. And yeah, so totally appreciate that. And then just on the point you made previously, just to give some assurance, our position is when you're looking at the digital agenda and how we communicate with folks, it isn't a one size fits all. It's about tailoring the message and the mechanism and the medium that you use to the audience that you're trying to reach. And that's a variety of people. So it's never going to be a case of we're going to stop doing printed word. We're going to stop having conversations with folks. We're going to stop having public discussions in lieu of doing something digitally. Even if we do offer to give them a device, that's not the intention. Some of our residents and tenants will have an expectation, because they're able to engage with us better if they use a mobile phone or whatever the case may be. So our job is to make sure that we're able to facilitate that, but equally for those that aren't able to or don't want to or have a different way they want to get in touch with us, that's our job to make sure that we can make that happen. So thanks for that, but just some assurance that we're on board with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch-Wilson, your hand is still up. Is that a legacy hand? Okay, Councillor Lloyd-Selby, I'll bring you in now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to come back in on the points that Lance made. Lance, just to say thank you. That was the reassurance that I was looking for. So that's really good to hear. And in terms of some of those metrics that you're capturing, will some of that appear within your director's report when the time is right for you to present that to committee?
Potentially, yes. I would tend to, in fact, that was what the one bit of the director's report, because I've started writing it already, that I'm slightly unsure of, because what we were doing, I don't know if you remember last year's, but we started to introduce some graphs so that we could track some progress over the years, which I like being able to do, but at the same time, it's made the report really quite long, and it's always a balance, isn't it? How much do you make these accessible reports versus how much do you give the detail that some people want? So yeah, sorry to fudge it. I haven't really decided for sure yet, but certainly something like that really positive performance around domiciliary care, I would certainly think that would be one of the bits that we would analyse and describe in that report. Unfortunately, we tend to always focus on the bits that we're not doing as well at, because we want to do something differently. So I've got to make sure the director's report is a proper balance of those two. So
absolutely, and look forward to seeing where you land with it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Amy, am I right in thinking we've not had any specific recommendations from the committee?
No formal recommendations as yet, Chair, unless any of the councillors wish to emphasise that on their comments, which obviously have all been captured and heard by Cabinet members present this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in that case, then we will go with the recommendations that we have here. That sorry. Oh God, hang on, my computer stopped working. Oh no, here it is. Okay, so the Social Services Appendix A and Environment and Housing Services Appendix B, Directorate Plans and associated measures and performance targets for 2026-27 contained with them be endorsed. Are we happy with that? Councillor Thomas?
Yeah, just move me endorse and then refer to Cabinet, which I think is the other one.
Yes. Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, I was going to second it.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for your time tonight, officers. I will now go on to agenda item 6, which is the task and finish report. Councillor Hennessy.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank Neil, who was originally going to be doing this report for me, because I was supposed to be recovering from surgery, but sadly my operation got cancelled. So, Firstly, I would like to thank all my fellow councillors who took part in this task and finish group and for all their positive contributions. I would also like to thank all the officers, staff, especially Amy, who helped me and the group out a lot, and without her, I would have found this very difficult. But I specifically would like to thank all the members of the public who attended our meetings or provided evidence and experiences and voiced their opinion on how we could make things better. But the one thing I would like to thank tremendously is the young women of the Young Ambassadors group who had the courage to come along to one of our meetings and voice their concerns about how they were treated as young women. Only female members attended this meeting, and then they reported back to the full group. It was so heartbreaking and shocking what they had to report back to us. The young women reported experience of body shaming, exclusion, and example of toxic masculinity that they felt that was not addressed. And this was contributed to the decline in girls' participation in sport and exclusion over the time at school. This was an eye-opener for every single one of us at this committee. And I would ask that the task and that Startwell Scrutiny Committee look at this with some urgency, because this is unacceptable in this day and age, and this should not be happening. And no young lady should have to go through this or feel this. And as an adult and as a male, I felt really ashamed about how boys and young men treated them. I would like to commend this report to the Live Well Scrutiny Committee for their thoughts and opinions on how we could do things going forward. But if you have any questions, I see that Dave Nevis is present, and that if you have any other questions from any members of the committee who was there, I'm pretty sure they would be happy to answer anything you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate, I know members have had the report in advance and can see the recommendations that are contained within the report. I just wanted to highlight that obviously the formal recommendation before the committee this evening is obviously to seek the committee's approval of the report in order to refer it to Cabinet for consideration, because ultimately the recommendations are being provided to the Cabinet for their response. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I should admit that I obviously put forward the initial sort of request or suggestion, and it was interesting to see how that initial thought of mine was sort of honed in on in terms of the direction of travel with relation to the barriers that we became aware of. And I think what's important to highlight in this report, we already can see, and it should be acknowledged, the work that the council does, and in partnership and collaboration with Legacy Leisure. And as a user, I should disclose that. And as a woman of a certain age, I do benefit from participating in a form of activity. However, what this report highlights is that there still remains gaps, and women in particular who are either key carers or working or have additional responsibilities, or simply do not know how to access information are slipping through those gaps. And I think this report is quite simplistic in being able to suggest to the and recommend to Cabinet that there are some clear responses that they can sort of as a council that we can take right now that are of very little cost to us as a council, but will benefit so many, and that is around communication, information, because it is already out there. It's about tapping into our networks, tapping into the information that's there and bridging those gaps. So there is a more joined up approach between the services and the organisations that offer some form of activity. And I think that these are quite realistic and measurable sort of objectives that we can achieve. And I'm quite proud of that the members on the Task and Finish were able to identify that alongside with the members of public who were able to tell us quite openly and honestly why they don't participate in any type of sport. And I know that there are wider issues that we need to consider going forward. I know there are people that we are in our wards that we care for, that we represent, that we do our best for, who are struggling every day, who will never get an opportunity right now of participating in any type of form of activity. But there are opportunities that we have with this report to reduce that gap. And if nothing else, if we help just one or two individuals, then we're starting a journey for us all as an organisation to make a difference, because I think it's already been highlighted and touched upon in Trevor's section of his report that activity and removing barriers to activity helps with mental health, helps with self-esteem, helps with community inclusion, community engagement, and it breaks down barriers. And those are the only points I wanted to say, Chair. And I enjoyed being a member of the Task and Finish group. I learned a lot. I came in with some stereotypical assumptions myself on barriers, and I'm glad to see that they were changed. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Belinda. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to associate myself with Councillor Hennessy's and Councillor Lovelock-Edwards' remarks, and also compliment Councillor Hennessy on his chairing of the TNF group, which was inclusive and productive. During our work, we were pleased to discover that, as Councillor Lovelock-Edwards referred to, that generally speaking, there is a good level of participation in physical activity and sport in the Vale, but there are some barriers for some people, such as cost, lack of information, and available time. There are some solutions or suggested solutions within the report, which I commend. However, there are some groups that seem underrepresented, and the comparatively stronger decline in girls' participation than boys was concerning. And when we heard of the comments from the Young Ambassadors Network that Councillor Hennessy just referred to, it became obvious that these young women face some really offensive and intimidating behaviour, which discouraged them from continuing to take part, despite the enjoyment they'd previously derived. This decline then carries on as they get older, and we do see a drop off in the number of young women participating in sport, which then continues through their lives. The report suggests that the Starkwell Scrutiny Committee consider this evidence that sits within their remit, and I would strongly urge them to strongly consider it, if you excuse my double use of the word. But yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else wish to make a comment or have any questions? Okay, there are tumbleweeds on that one. So I will, in that case, I will also add my thanks to the officers and the members of public and also the councillors that were involved in this. It was a very interesting thing to be involved in, and I found out quite a lot that will come in useful in the future. Okay, so the recommendation for this is that the report and recommendations contained therein be referred to Cabinet for consideration and that a formal response be requested, including agreed next steps. Are we happy with that recommendation? Councillor Hennessy?
I'm happy to endorse this recommendation 100%.
Okay, I will happily second that recommendation. Amy, I think that's it now, isn't it? We have no urgent items, am I right?
That's correct, Chair. That was your last agenda item this evening.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for everybody's time this evening. I will let you go and you can enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll try and get this limpid off my shoulder. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.